And a good day to you, Explorer Nation. John Lynskey, your ambassador for Alumni Affairs, here with Season 6, Episode 7 of Looking Back with Lynskey. But more importantly, it is Episode 100. Yes, we have hit triple digits. Quite an accomplishment for something that started off as just another Columbus lark, and here we are. So today we're going to do things a little different. My esteemed guest today, my very good friend, Adrian Alfonso, class of 1998, president of our school board. We're going to flip-flop things today. So Adrian's going to ask the questions. I'm going to answer them. Why not? It's episode 100. So Adrian, thank you for being here, my brother, and I'm turning it over to you, bro.
Thank you, John. Congratulations, 100.
How about that?
I know when you started this with Melissa, it was just an idea. Nobody ever thought we were going to get to where we're at today. So congratulations. It's a huge honor to be sitting here. I'm not sure why I'm sitting here, but it's a huge honor, and I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Should be exciting.
So here we go.
So I call you John, Mr. Lynskey, Coach Lynskey, Ambassador.
Your
you have so
choice.
many names. It's difficult to.
You pick one.
I'll go with John. Recently, we're stuck
easy.
with John, so we'll go with John.
Okay.
So John, like you always start these podcasts, let's go to the very beginning. I mean, your family's been here since the early 1900s, right? 100 years ago, you went to Epiphany. Talk to us a little bit about how Miami was, what you were like, your family, before you came to Columbus.
Okay. Yeah, it was a different time. Yes, my grandfather on my mom's side moved down here from upstate New York in 1919. He had served in World War I, almost froze to death in France, and said, I'm not going to be cold anymore. So he came down here in 1919 and got into the hotel business. And my family's been here ever since. My dad's side came down in 1926. So, yeah, been here a very long time, born and raised here, and loved growing up in Miami. Truly did.
I'm sure it was different back then.
It was totally different. I mean, Adrian, remember when I was about 5, there was a Klan rally on US 1 and 152nd Street. That's how much this city has changed. I didn't really know what a Klan rally was, but my mother explained it to me, and it was like, wow.
And US 1 and 152nd back then, that's deep south. I mean,
Yeah,
that's down.
we always lived down south. That's always down south. Went to Epiphany. Grew up in a Palmetto neighborhood, and my neighborhood friends were all public school. Went to Palmetto, but there was no question. Irish Catholic family, going to Epiphany, then going to Columbus. There was no option, no choice. And what's great, and you know this, many of my friends from not only Columbus, but Epiphany are still my close friends.
Yeah. I got the same thing with St. Teresa.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Back then, Epiphany started in kindergarten, or?
Yes, it did.
So you did K through 8th at Epiphany?
Yeah, a king all the way through,
There you
bro.
go. And then you were introduced to Columbus and the Marist brothers. Talk to us about Columbus back then. A lot was different, but I'm sure there was a lot of the same things that even the kids today feel and sense here at Columbus.
You know, it's interesting what you remember as a kid, right? One of my earliest memories is my grandparents lived on 32nd Street and 97th Avenue. And my uncle graduated from here in 1964. And for whatever reason, I remember this. My grandmother was driving me down 32nd Street and pointed to Columbus and said, that's where your Uncle Paul just graduated, and you're going to go to school there one day. And I looked at Columbus, and I thought it was the biggest place I'd ever seen. And I remember my uncle and his friends were crazy. They were crazy. So Columbus guys have always been crazy, and I was scared of these big old guys. But so Columbus was in my mind from childhood. And so me and my buddies came over from Epiphany, and it was different. I think the most obvious change would be at the time Columbus was 95% Catholic school kids, totally. Hardly any public school kids here. And it was mostly Irish, Italian, or German. There were a few Cuban kids, not many. The migration, the integration was just starting, but it was about 800 guys at the time, and a lot of Marist brothers here, and no air conditioning.
No Moss building, no Limones building, no.
We had A, B, and C building, the cafeteria, the gym, And football fields and baseball fields mostly made out of coral rock.
Yeah.
And again, no air conditioning.
And the brothers back then were living up on the second floor of the C building, or they had the
No,
house
no,
made
that
out?
was earlier in the
was
60s. Actually, another thing, my grandfather helped build the brothers' residence in 1965.
Oh.
So, yeah. But, man, it was such a great place to go to school and such a great time to grow up.
Talk to me about some of the teachers that were here back then. I'm sure that some of them influenced you in deciding to become a teacher. I know there's some that are still around, which is crazy to believe, but take us back, talk to us about some of those teachers and classrooms and classes that you had back then that you still talk about today.
I think we all find our path in life at various ages. Some people don't figure out what they want to do until they're in their 30s or whatever. Honestly, I've told him this, I knew exactly what I was going to do about 15 minutes into high school, because my very first teacher here was Carter Burris. And he was larger than life, and he was dynamic, and he was bold, and he saw my name, and Lynskey, Paul Lynskey? And I was the same height I am now, and I weighed about 115 pounds back then.
And he was bigger than he is now.
And he was still in his, right around 30 at that time. So he was big, man, and he was strong, and the rules were different. He says, your uncle was one of the toughest guys I knew. Are you as tough as your uncle? I'm like, I don't know, sir. So, man, he wails me in the chest, and, I took it. He goes, yeah, you're okay. And then he starts teaching, and I said, you got to be kidding me. This guy gets paid money to tell stories about history, which I loved, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. And it was that simple. And
one of the legends has a tree named after him, right?
He does. The oak tree out by the football field, the Carter Burris perpetual oak, which is the oldest living thing on campus, is that oak tree. And it was the only shade at all during football practice. So a lot of things happened under that tree. So, yes.
And the mysterious rock that he somehow found. And
well, that rock.
What's the story behind that?
There's a mystical quality to that rock. I minored in geology in college, and I was looking at the strata of that rock. And I'm pretty sure that rock came from a quarry near Lyon, where the Hermitage was constructed. So we're pretty sure that is a blessed rock.
How much did Carter pay you to say that, John?
Listen, it sounded good. The rock looks great. Everybody believes it, So
Just
why
go
not?
with it.
Go with it.
Just don't crack that rock open.
No.
We don't know what's in there.
No.
So you said there was a lot of brothers back then, right?
Yes.
When you look at, even when I came here, there was a good number of brothers. There's less brothers today actively working in the school. There's a lot still helping and doing things around the school. Back then, to your point, most of your teachers were brothers, or a good number of them?
A good number of them. It was almost exclusively male teachers. There were just a handful of women teachers here. Mrs. Call was one. Miss Como was another. But that was really it. It was a male-dominated thing. And the brothers, and this is what I find so interesting in hindsight, is the brothers never spoke about Marshall and Champagne. We never heard about the guy. It just wasn't talked about because we lived it every day. The spirit of Marshall and everything we talk about today, it was just in the water. You naturally figured out what was Marist and how to conduct yourself. And yeah, I mean, Adrian, times change. The rules were different. People say, things change. I said, of course they do. And teachers did certain things they can't do today, but then again, we didn't have air conditioning.
Yeah.
Okay, teachers smoked in class.
It's a good swap.
Yeah, hey, when we got air conditioning when I was a junior, it was like the liberation of Paris. It was unbelievable.
So that happened in 73?
It happened.
73?
The AC came in 1976.
76.
Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting how the school's evolved, and to your point, Marshall and Champagne. I mean, when I came here, which was 98, it feels like it was the other day, but it wasn't. The most you got was a picture in the classroom.
Yeah, we didn't even have that.
Really, but the charism of what being Marist was alive when I came. It's definitely alive today, and I'm sure when you were here in the 70s, it was very.
We didn't know what it was, but we felt it, and literally, and I know you understand this. I love coming to school.
Yeah.
I didn't want to miss school. I mean, I argued with my mom about being sick. You should stay home. No, I'm going to school. Let's see what's going to happen today. You know, and we had so much fun. But we did learn, and this is what gets overlooked sometimes. As much fun as this place is, we learned.
Oh, no, for sure.
And we learned very well.
Yeah. So in Carter's classes is when you had the epiphany
Yes.
that you wanted to teach. And you knew you wanted to teach history at that point?
Yes, absolutely. My great loves growing up were three things. I loved history, I loved sports, and I loved music. And that was my life growing up.
Yeah.
Those are the three things I did.
You can check them all off your list in the many years after Columbus, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
So let's talk about that. You graduate 1978. from
1978,
Columbus,
yes, I did.
And you end up going?
I went to Fort Lewis College out in Colorado to play football. We had a pipeline out to Fort Lewis. It's in Durango, Colorado. Dave Riley, who was my head coach, was a science teacher here forever. God bless his soul. The head coach out at Fort Lewis was a friend of Dave's. So at one point, there were about 8 Columbus guys playing football at Fort Lewis, and Fred Foyo was the first one to go there. And Durango, Colorado is in the Four Corners region of Colorado. It's absolute God's country. Beautiful. Loved it out there. Majored in American history. Enjoyed my time. But I wanted to keep learning. So I applied to grad school and got accepted to Villanova in Philadelphia, and truly enjoyed Villanova. Got a tremendous education at Villanova, and once again, a Catholic education. And so I got my MA in American history, and it's funny how things turn out, brother. I had been tutoring kids from Lower Merion High School in Philly. It's a prestigious, it's a Columbus-style school. Kobe Bryant went to high school there. And they offered me a job, and it was a good job, and I liked Philly. But something in the back of my head said, no, you've come this far. Life puts people, in a certain position at a certain time on a whim from a payphone on Vine Street in Philadelphia, where I was working on a loading dock during the summer, which was a sketchy area at best. I called Brother Edmund Sheehan, who had been principal when I was in school, and my brother had just graduated from Columbus. So I said, hey, Brother John Lynskey, I just got my master's at Villanova. Do you have any history openings? And you know Brother Edmund, the voice of God,
yeah.
yes. So there's this pause, and he goes, I assume you would like to coach football. We will see you August 15th. Click. And I'm like, what just happened? And so this bookie behind me at the payphone is getting impatient, so I call Brother back. I said, Brother, and you know how intimidating he is.
He's still intimidating.
I'm like, Brother, just to be clear, I have a teaching job. We will see you August 15th. Click.
No, this is with your salary. This is what you're going to be
No, that was it.
No.
And I wasn't calling him back. There's no way I'm calling him a third time. So August 15th, I show up. I find out I'm teaching history, and here we go.
That's incredible.
So those 30 seconds, if it was 30 seconds, changed.
Combined with those
combined,
2 calls.
maybe, changed the next 40 plus years of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you played, going back with Foyle, Fred was here already by the time you...
Yeah, Fred was a senior when I was a freshman.
So you played football with him here as well?
Well, he was on the varsity. I was ninth grade. I didn't even play
Must
football.
have been pretty intimidating back
He was
then.
the most intimidating guy in school. Fred Foyo, there's always a guy you don't mess with.
That was Fred.
It was Fred. Come to find out later, Fred had a heart of gold.
He does, yeah.
But he was a bad dude. Yeah. And so we played together in college, and then he coached for a couple years after he was done playing. And funny story about Fred. When I was at Villanova, and I think this was what spurred on the phone call to Brother Edmund, I came home for Christmas, hadn't been home in a few years, and I came to campus. The first person I run into is Foyo. And I hadn't seen Fred since Durango. I said, what are you doing? He says, I work here. I said, you work here? He said, yeah, man, they'll hire anybody here. You should do it.
Edmund hired him too? Brother
Edmund hired him, and then it gets better. He introduces me to this other disreputable looking person. This is Steve O'Brien. I coach track with him. He works here too. And I'm thinking to myself, literally, how hard can this be?
To get a job here?
You know? So yes, so me, Fred, and OB became instant friends when I came back to work here. And you know how that went.
The rest is history. He was great guy. I never had him in class.
You were too smart to have
Well,
him
I
play.
just never. My brother had him. Andres had him. They would play chess in the back the whole time. But it was good times. I was lucky enough to have you and Brother Edmund. That was an intimidating class as well with Brother Edmund.
Great man.
Fun times. So you start teaching here. Was it finally history, or they just
I started
plucked you wherever there was
No,
a need?
I like most history teachers back then, they started you in freshman year. So I was
You
teaching.
love those freshman kids.
Oh, jeez, bro. Thank God it was only a year, because it doesn't work for me. Yeah, everybody's different, right? Some people like freshmen. Some people are afraid of seniors. I belonged with older kids. But I taught world history, which I didn't really care for. And I taught a typing class, although I did not know how to type. Mr. Lindforce was one of my students. I mean, I knew how to type, but but my
not the
own
correct
style. Yeah, not the correct,
Yeah.
whatever thing. And we just had an understanding. I said, man, if the door opens, just start banging away on the keys, And so, again, it was funny. After the first year, I had my master's from Villanova on the Vietnam War. That's what I focused on. Although I'd been a World War II guy my whole life, everybody knew World War II back then, but people didn't really talk about Vietnam because we lost. So I focused on that, and I asked Brother Francis Garza, who took over from Brother Edmund, Brother, I have a master's, Vietnam, could I teach an elective? And again, there was no real discussion. He said, well, if you can get 10 kids to sign up, sure. So from that one conversation, the Vietnam class was born. And,
Yeah, it's a great class. I mean, the Battle of the Bien Phu. I mean, it was an amazing class. You taught that for
20,
how long?
25 years.
25 years.
Twice a year. So in a way, I did it for like 50 years.
Which part of that class was your favorite class?
I would say, now you guys, and as
I'm
I
assuming it
did,
was different eras
Yes.
too over those 25 years, and the class evolved.
it did. You're absolutely right. Dien Bien Phu, everybody
Yeah,
loved
everybody.
Dien. If you don't like Dien Bien Phu, something's wrong with you. But the part I enjoyed the most were teaching those 3 years, 1968, 1969, 1970, when so many things happened, elections and assassinations and everything. It's such a traumatic, an interesting time in America. Landing on the moon, Woodstock, you name it. I loved that period there.
Gotcha. And you, towards the end of your teaching career, we call it here at Columbus, you were teaching a World War II class, right?
It's funny how things go full circle, bro. The reason I taught Vietnam is when, in 1984, there was no need to teach World War II. Everybody knew World War II. Everybody knew. And I'm like, why am I going to teach? Everybody knows it. But I noticed as the years went on and the decades passed, I don't know if you remember, we would start the class and say, and World War II ended and yada, yada. And I didn't have to say anything else because you guys all just, okay, you knew. Hitler, Stalin, yeah, whatever. As I got into the 2000s, I'm like, that empty swimming pool stare
Yep.
that Columbus kids
Yep,
give
yep.
when they have no idea what you're talking about? I go, wait a second. World War II, Hitler, Stalin, Pearl Harbor.
Nothing.
And that's when I said, okay. This has been great. I've enjoyed it, but these kids seriously need to know about World War II. So I flipped everything and went back to my original first love anyway.
How difficult was that after 25 years teaching the same class? And I'm sure it was easy for you at that point to switch to something that was new, challenging.
You know what, Adrian, and I think most people can relate to this. When I told people, I was 50, I told people, listen, I'm done with Vietnam. I want to teach World War II. These kids need to learn it. I said, I can do it with my eyes closed. And they're like, that's great, you can do it. I said, no, it's not great that I can do it with my eyes closed. It's not a challenge anymore. Sure. So I reinvented myself as a teacher at 50. Best thing I ever did. I had to go back and work. Old school, put it all together again, build a class, and I loved every second of it.
So you taught that from what years to what years?
I taught it for 5 years, so from about 2009 to 2014.
Then-
And I loved every second of it.
Then you got plugged to do
Bro,
what you didn't want to do, but you were great at.
thank you for that. But yes,
Because you did not want that job.
listen, man, you've heard the story. I'll never forget it. After 5 years, I finally had World War II right where I wanted it. And I was enjoying it. The kids were loving it. It was almost a team experience. I wasn't really the teacher anymore. I was just another guy in the class, and we're rolling. And I was so happy.
Were
And
there
that-
kids from other classes jumping in even though they weren't?
Yeah, they just wanted to come in and, of course, as a teacher, that's what you want. So I'm minding my own business, right? I'm walking between B and C, and I see McKeon and Pugh, and they go, John, come here. And I figured they needed help with something. Something was going on. Then I got closer, and I see this look on their face, this twinkle, and I go,
No.
this is not good. This is not good. And another one of those conversations, they go, listen, because Pugh is becoming principal, Dean of Discipline's open. I said, yeah. They said, you haven't applied. I said, no. They said, well, you need to be dean. I said, no, I don't. You need to be dean. I said, no, I really don't. Oh, yeah, you really do. And then Pugh hit me with Catholic guilt. He says, if you don't do it, the school's going to suffer. And you can do for the whole school what you do for the senior class, and you need to. And I'm like, you know what I wanted to say to him?
Yeah.
He said, just do me a favor. And Chris is looking at me like, come on, we can work together. We can do this.
Was he trying to convince you to become
Exactly,
dean, or
exactly.
Trying to avoid
talk
you getting
me
the
out
yes,
of it.
trying to
Yeah,
talk you
give
out
me
of it.
reasons not
That
to
too,
take it.
Exactly.
But Dave said, please, just think about it over the weekend. So I went home, and it kept resonating with me. He says, you can do for the whole school what you do for the senior class. I said, yes, best decision I ever made.
Didn't you try to stay in the classroom for at least one class? Or
I
no?
tried, it was impossible.
It's impossible.
Because what was great about the job, in the classroom, you're regimented. I mean, I got to the point where I knew I had 1 minute left. I had 30 seconds left. And today I'm going to do this, and this. Dean, there's no schedule, there's no nothing.
Can change in a second.
All the days end in Y, and that's it. And so teaching was impossible. But man, I love that job. I love that job.
During your time teaching here, you were also coaching football.
I did.
Right?
I did. I coached
You
for
coached
about 20 years.
Under Coach Lavelle and Coach Dunn.
Coach Lavelle and Coach Dunn's first tour of duty here, yes. And I had the privilege of working with the men who coached me. Coach Lavelle, Coach Dean, Coach Zorzi, that getting the opportunity to work with men like that who helped you as an individual, I loved being on that staff. And Coach Foyle was on that staff too. Coach Mirabal was on that staff. We had a great staff. We had a great time. And then things, I think like anything, and you know this in your business, there's a shelf life on everything. And then things they need to change. And so Coach Lavelle's tenure came to an end, and then Coach Dunn came in, and I loved those 2 years working with him.
Did the coaching staff know Coach Dunn before he came?
No.
He
Absolutely no.
There was some resistance to that. At the
There was a
beginning,
lot of resistance to everything, yeah. Because Coach
which
Lavelle...
comes with change, right? Whenever
Yes.
there's change,
And-
there's usually some resistance to it.
And particularly everybody on his staff had played for him, so there was great loyalty. But Dunn came in, and he was assistant coach at Harvard at the time.
Yeah.
He came in, and he walked into a tough situation, and he handled it perfectly. He says, I don't care about politics, I don't care about drama, I'm just here to win football games. The smartest thing the man said is, I need your help. You need to help me. He didn't come in, you work for me, and he says, you guys know what's going on here. I don't. I need your help. And boy, he changed things.
He was great, left, and then came back, and the
Yes,
rest
so
is
happy
history,
to get him
as they
when
say.
he returned. Yes.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
So one of the things when you and I were preparing for this, you told me you taught religion for 2 years.
Okay.
How did that happen?
It was, the one thing I wanted to teach, I always wanted to teach English. I really, really did. It just didn't work out. Dr. Dugard came to me, and there was a scheduling glitch.
Deacon.
Deacon Dugard.
For me, it's coach. He was a coach at St. Teresa back in the,
Okay,
back,
so
back
we
in the
all
early
got
90s. So he has a few names as well.
Yeah, he does have quite a few names, actually. So Jim comes to me and he says, look, we got a scheduling glitch. There's a morality and ethics course. It was a semester course. We don't have anybody to cover it. And I happened to have 9 sections of Vietnam at the time. 10, it would be 5 and 5. Mm-hmm. He said, do you want to do it? And I said, morality and ethics? I said, that's right up my alley. And I will give Deacon Dugard a lot of credit because when he first got here, he took over campus ministry, and smart guy. He knew who was who around Columbus, and he said, I need you to become involved with the encounters. I said, no, I don't want to do that. I need you. I said, I don't care what you need. I don't want to do it. Wore me down. Just wore me down. Finally, I said, all right, I'll do it if you just leave me alone, okay? I started going on encounters. It was awesome. It was awesome. I enjoyed that tremendously. But
You're still leading encounters.
I
these
still,
days, right?
when I can, yeah. We had that great alumni retreat, which was fantastic.
That was wonderful.
It was,
and the last encounter was pretty much at capacity.
Yes,
I heard.
yeah, and so
great to hear.
Teaching morality and ethics, and Jim just said, do it whatever way you want to do it, and I loved it because with older kids, and you know this, you can talk to older kids in a much different way than you can talk to 9th graders, as you should. Or shouldn't, whatever the case may be. I enjoyed that class because you could talk about real life things, real life experiences that I had had, that they had had, and I got to do it for 2 years before my schedule filled up again. But I enjoyed that tremendously, and I didn't get into doctrine or anything like that. It was just you and me talking about the challenges of life.
I think I had Mr. Larkin teach us that.
My classmate.
Larkin was your classmate?
Yes, indeed.
Look at
yes,
that.
And
saw him 2 years ago. He was here at the Pig Roast, I think it was.
Yeah, God bless him.
God bless him.
No, but man, that was great. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So something I really didn't know much about until maybe 4 or 5 years ago was your involvement with the Allman Brothers.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. When did that start? How did it start? For how long were you working for them? You're still involved with them?
I'll try to give the very abridged story. Growing up in what is now Palmetto Bay, I was the youngest kid in the neighborhood by several years. And the difference, like our age difference today, is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. But when you're 12 and the other guys are 14 or 15, that's a big deal. And so these guys took me under their wing. I learned how to play sports from them. I got my ass beat a lot because they were so much bigger than me, but that was good for me. They loved history like my dad did, and we would talk about history. But they also, music in the early to mid-'70s was very important. And they were the guys that said, you need to listen to this, you need to listen to this, you need to listen. And I fell in love with rock and roll that way, across the board, everything you can think of what is now classic rock. I loved all of it, from, the Beatles, Zeppelin, you name it, the whole 9 yards. It was a great time to grow up. James Taylor, Jackson Browne, Bob Dylan, on and on. I just was drawn to the Allman Brothers. I loved their sound, I loved their intensity, I loved their style, and they became my favorite band. And I just, the way I studied history, I studied them. I knew their story, I knew they had a lot of triumphs and tragedies and everything else, and I always just listened to their music. And then, long story short, in 1989, they got back together for a reunion tour.
So you were teaching here already?
Oh, yeah. I was 29 years old, and they had been broken up for years. It was classic, let's get together, make some money, whatever type of thing. And they were playing Sunrise Musical, which was a venue up in Fort Lauderdale. It's not there anymore. Beautiful theater. I went up there, and this is what I don't remember, Adrian. I'm
not going to ask why.
No, seriously, I can't remember. I knew what their tour manager looked like. I'd seen his picture somewhere. I don't know. I see this guy in the parking lot, and I know it's him. His name's Kirk West. And I walked up to him, and I said, you're Kirk West? He goes, he's a hippie dude, He goes, on my better days, I'm Kirk West. And I introduced myself, and I said, this is great. I can't believe they're back together, yada, yada. And we just, how you hit it off with someone?
Yep.
And after a while, he goes, you know a lot. Well, I know a little. He goes, we need people like you in this organization because no one can remember anything anymore. And that was my introduction. And being a history guy and a history teacher paid off because they needed someone that had knowledge. And through Kirk, I gradually got more involved and started doing publicity for them. Teacher, summers off, started going on the road, selling merchandise, doing publicity, and I got an opportunity, Adrian, and I didn't screw it up.
Was it tough juggling both Columbus and what you were doing here and the Allman Brothers, or it kind of worked out based on the timing?
The timing.
I'm assuming they were
worked out.
sleeping most of the time when you're here teaching.
It was.
And they would wake up at 2 or 3.
It was so. That's a great question. In that, I learned so much. It was a great experience, of course, and you get a chance to work for your heroes, but you need to get over that real quick, or you're not going to have a job, because you're there to do a job. You're not there to be a fanboy, But you're absolutely right. Well, during the school year, I'd get up, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, on the road with the Almonds, it's a nocturnal thing. I was going to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the most important thing I learned was you could integrate both worlds into the other, one into the other. From Columbus, I brought structure and organization and, that 1 minute, that 30-second, this is what you're doing. Structure to that. From them to here, I brought improvisation. Things happen. You've got to adapt. And I learned how to deal with people. Probably the most important lesson I learned is dealing with people that never hear no for a living. Rock stars don't hear no. They're rock stars for a reason, and they've earned that right.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be able to talk to people to get them to do something that they may not want to do and convince them it was their idea, But I saw all parts of the country. I met all kinds of people. I had wonderful experiences. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And yeah, I'm still involved with them.
What are some of the craziest or nicest places you went to traveling with the Allman Brothers?
I think if you like venues, Red Rocks in Colorado is an absolutely gorgeous place. It's fantastic. I love the venue up in Boston. I think crazy things happen when you travel that much. Crazy things happen. I'll never forget this. We were in Big Sky, Montana for the 4th of July, and Big Sky is right on the edge of Yellowstone National Park. We had played in Spokane, Washington the day before, and it was like literally 90 degrees, okay? We get to Big Sky the next day, it snowed. It snowed on the 4th of July in Big Sky. I mean, so things like that. But no, New York City, obviously Madison Square Garden, beautiful theaters around the country. And you get to see the same people year after year after year. You play the same venues.
What are you doing for them these days? I know you were running the house.
The Allman Brothers Band Museum in Macon, Georgia, where we now live. It's a great museum. It's the only band house museum in the country where they actually lived, how they lived. And I'm still doing archival releases for them, publicity, things. I helped Greg Allman write his book, which was quite an interesting experience. And so right now my life is the best of both worlds,
So let's Macon, Georgia. You said, so in 2021 is when you decided?
2021.
You decided to move to Macon, Georgia. Talk to us, where you were at that point. I know you were Dean of Discipline.
Yeah, I was Dean.
And you decided to retire from Columbus to a certain extent.
Well, and I think you understand this. People say, why'd you leave Columbus? We didn't leave Columbus, left Miami. I just didn't want to be here anymore, okay? There were, some reasons, my daughter and everything. It was just too many memories. And it was too crowded, too hot, too expensive, too much. And Macon had become very familiar to us, loved it there, got friends there. Everything, it's less. I said if they moved Columbus to Macon, I never would have left. So it wasn't leaving Columbus. It was just you reach and, you'll get there. You reach a stage in your life where you need a change.
Now you have the best of both worlds.
I do.
You have Columbus a good portion of the time, and you have Macon, Georgia when you want to get out of here.
You know, Columbus is like a grandchild now. I can come down, I can visit, I see all the positives, I have a good time.
Just return it
I
back.
cause some problems, and I just turn it back over to Dave
great-
and Tom and you.
That's a great. That's a great analogy.
You know?
I love it. I love it. So when you left, you were already working with the alumni or with development or.
Great. Again, things happen. Tom, you know, Pew, everybody was like, man, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I said, listen, it's not the school. Just don't want to be in Miami anymore. But Tom was like, listen, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. Isn't there something we can do to keep you involved? I said, well, what are you thinking? I wasn't thinking that way. He says, you have such a connection to the alumni. We can utilize that. So it was Tom's idea to get me just sort of dabbling in development a little bit. And all of a sudden, it just started to work. I'd come back, and all those years that we spent in the classroom, and guys, you never know the impact you have on someone until you're put in a position to deal with guys. And I've known you for forever. You know, I saw you a lot, but other guys, I hadn't seen in, 30 years. They're now in their 50s. They're very successful, and they're like, man, this place, what you did, what Foyo did, what OB did, they want to give back. And it became very natural, and it's the position has only grown. And I give Nick Ramos credit; he's the one that coined Ambassador of Alumni Affairs, which is just a ridiculous title.
Can we get creative in coming up with titles or what?
I mean,
that's just a great title. I remember when you and I talked about, because at first it was part-time what you were doing.
It was part-time.
And I remember, I think we had lunch at Doc B's or something.
We did,
You were here,
exactly.
And we started talking about you potentially coming full-time. And you were even considering moving back to Miami for a
5 minutes,
for a split second until you left Doc B's and had traffic to come back to Columbus.
I said no.
But I mean, I remember talking to Tom and telling Tom, if he wants to come back full-time, we got to make this work. And I think you and Nick and Tom have such a great groove going on in dealing with the alumni, because you each bring a different taste to development and the relationship with the alumni in general. I mean, I think it's great, the three of you. How long did it take you guys to get into that groove?
Not very long. Not very long at all. Tom and I, being roughly the same age, growing up at the same time, we've got a guy of a certain age relationship that works perfectly. To your point, bringing Nick in, I think the sum is greater than the total of its parts, and we all contribute something different, and it works. It's one of those chemistry things that just works, and we don't step on each other's toes.
Yeah. No, that much I know, because I don't get calls from anyone complaining about
and so we've got a great team, and you throw in Flash, you throw in Brother,
it's a great team. It's
Marissa, Vivian now, it's
great.
We are really hitting
the
the
events
ground
have been
right.
elevated. Everything's just been exceptional what you guys are doing. Did you know Nick when he was? Do you remember?
Oh yeah,
Nick
I
as
had
a
Nick
student?
in class.
I've heard some stories about Nick back then.
Nick was incredibly average as a student.
Yeah, incredibly average.
He worked very hard to be incredibly average. But no, honestly, as soon as he walked in for the interview, I recognized him. And he was a kid that, he was quiet, but he was a Columbus type kid. There was something mischievous right below the surface there. But I could tell that he was very good at what he did.
It's funny, when we interviewed him, I think I asked him, somebody in the committee asked him, when have you been back to Columbus since you graduated? And the answer was like, not really.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the development guy that we're actually considering. And he's been one of the top persons that I think we've hired at Columbus. So talking about transitions in Columbus, let's go back, right?
Okay.
I think there's eras in any organization, in any country. You go back to history, right, where there's a pivot point and things change, and it's usually for the better. Since I've been around, I can think of, I think the late '90s, early 2000s was a pivotal moment for Columbus. I think Brother Kevin retiring as president and Tom coming in was another pivotal moment. Just curious to get your opinion, your thoughts as to the different pivotal moments in Columbus's history that got us to where we're at today, going back to the 70s, since you've been around a lot longer than me.
I would say the first big pivotal moment, late 70s into the early 80s, when Brother Edmund recognized that if you combine successful athletics with fine academics, you're going to build a powerhouse. And Brother Edmund, who is not a sports guy, he's one of the smartest men I've ever met, but he's not a sports guy, but he recognized the value of sports. And it was in that period, the late 70s into the 80s, we started getting good at football, we started getting good at baseball, and we started bringing in more kids, and we started getting headlines in the newspapers. And Edmund says, if you beat this football team, Northwestern, you get a big headline across the Miami Herald that cost us nothing. That was a huge pivot, and I give Edmund all the credit for that. That was big. I totally agree with you. Late 90s into the early 2000s, Brother Pat coming in, the principal president structure was huge.
The board?
School board.
School board.
Yes, school board.
Yeah.
The only question I'm going to ask you today is, how much has the school board changed since you first got involved with the school board?
That's a good question, John.
Yes, it is.
This wasn't supposed to happen.
I know. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I mean, look, I think the school board has, since I started, it's incredible. The alums and those that aren't alums, parents that have been involved with the board. One of the things that I wanted to do when I became board chair was to kind of get younger alums involved. It seems like it was a lot of the same people. Jim Bernhardt, who was the first chair. I mean, it doesn't get better than
No,
Mr.
it does
Bernhardt.
not.
And till today, he still challenges us to do better. So it's changed. I think it's evolved. I think we got great committees. We got great younger, new faces. I think a lot of the people on the board today might not have been that recognizable to the faculty or to the administration or to the alumni a few years ago.
Correct.
And we have great people doing great work. So I'm very proud of all the work that we've done on the board. I think I got 2.5 years left. So it's just going to continue to improve and get better with the years.
Couldn't agree more. We got a lot to do. Okay, back to you.
So you said the late 90s, early 2000s. I think the switch from Brother Kevin to Tom was also huge.
Absolutely.
It was a huge uncertainty. I think Tom's doing a phenomenal job. I think him getting you involved has been great. Do you agree with those, I guess those really 3 or 4 key pivotal moments of Columbus history?
I couldn't agree more. You're absolutely right, and I want to add one more.
Yeah.
First lay principal Dave Pugh.
True.
Huge,
Yeah.
because no one knew how that was going to go. And as we were talking earlier, when I was in school, even to a certain extent when you were in school, no one knew what being Marist was. We just did it. For the Marist brothers to have confidence in what they had done at this school to turn the keys over to a lay person was huge. And they couldn't have picked
A better person. Yeah.
And so I think those are the stepping stones I see. And
I think one coming in the future is when there's no active brothers working at the school.
Yeah.
And I think the brothers have done a phenomenal job in instilling that Marist charism in the faculty and the administration and the alumni, and I think it's just going to continue.
Oh, absolutely. They have laid the groundwork where they're comfortable with lay people being in positions that never, ever would have happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever. The concept of a lay person even being an administrator was unheard of when I was in school. And now, so the Marist brothers have prepared very well for the future by teaching us about their past.
Yeah.
There's no question.
So speaking about the future, since you've been here since, 1974? Right?
Yeah, 50 years ago. Yes.
Education's changed, the way you teach has changed. You got AI already impacting the students, teachers more than students, I guess, because I guess it's harder for. How do you see technology and AI? How do you currently see it impacting what the faculty is doing and what we're doing here? How do you see the kids different, and what do you see in the future as it relates to that?
A couple of things. Any kind of change takes a while to play itself out. I remember when we went from blackboards to smartboards. And I was like, I don't need no smartboard. I got a blackboard. It took me a couple years to realize I'm an idiot. Smartboard makes me twice as good. I think the same thing is going to happen in a different way with AI. Nobody understands what it really is yet. We got to figure it out. It's here to stay, so deal with it. The way I taught, a lot of people, it's not really done that way anymore, and that's fine because the world has changed. Like anything, AI is going to work out, and I think the pendulum always swings back a little bit towards tradition. But like everything at Columbus, we're going to figure it out. But AI is here to stay.
I agree.
You know?
I mean, it's changing it's changing
I'm sure it's changing what you do.
It's changing
Yeah.
every single industry out there. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And to what you said, you almost have to embrace it and figure out how to work with it. And you can't fight it because it's winning.
You can't empty the ocean with a bucket, and you're not going to make
can't.
AI go away.
can't.
So, yeah.
So who's your favorite Maris brother, John?
You know, that's choosing between your children. But I had a couple, I have to say, obviously, Brother Edmund Sheehan is a great man. And that man, I mean, he hired me in 30 seconds. And he's done so much for this school. And done it in truly Marist fashion, behind the scenes, low profile. Brother Eugene and I had a great relationship, and you can't find two people more different than each other. When we wrote that 50-year history of Columbus, the book together, I never had more fun with a guy that was so different. I took him for philosophy of being when I was a senior. And this is the truth, I never worked harder for a lower grade. I worked like a dog, and the best I could get was a C+, B-. And one time I said to him, brother, what can I do any different? He says, nothing. You're as good as you're going to be. You know, okay, thanks, brother. But he said, you know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. You know, Brother Kevin is Brother Kevin. And then one of the greatest characters of all time, Brother Pat McNamara.
Yeah, you can't. Doesn't get better than that.
My God.
Yeah.
When he came to this place, he turned it upside down. I've never seen a man with more energy. And he just, again, he understood this place. Yeah. He knew how to have fun, but we got things done. Yeah.
He's a great guy. I remember the first time my wife Stephanie met him.
Yeah.
When we finished dinner, her first question to me was like, "He's a Marist brother?"
Exactly.
I go, yep, he's a Marist brother. He's great,
Exactly.
and he's in charge of all of them. Back then, he was a provincial.
I was like,
yeah, he's great, Brother Pat's.
When
great.
I met him, I'm like, who is this guy? What are we doing?
And it's amazing how he knew every student's name. I think, and I've gone out to lunch or dinner with him years after, and he still remembers kids who are now adults. I mean, it's incredible. He was phenomenal.
What they've done for this school as an order.
Yeah, no, that's
cannot.
That's true.
Measure it.
You know,
Yes,
we talk about Brother Edmund. I think I've told you this before. I really did not know the impact Brother Edmund's had on this school until your podcast.
Yeah.
I consider these podcasts to be part of the history that's going to be saved, and for another 60 years, you can go back and listen to Carter, who I think was your first guest, if I'm not
Carter
mistaken.
and OB were the first two guests.
Carter
I mean,
and OB. It doesn't get
just better or worse, however you want to look at it. Yes, and I give Melissa Marty all the credit. She had the idea. Why don't you just talk to your friends about? And it started as a lark. It was something to do, particularly when COVID hit and not a lot was happening. And it turned, classic Columbus, it turned into something. And it is oral history. And we get these people, because you're right, in a few years you don't know. And now we have a viable way to trace, because everybody's story is unique here at this unique place. So
you've done 100 podcasts.
Yes.
What's your favorite podcast?
Oh.
Top 5 that you get out of it.
Some have been really different. I had Mr. O'Brien, of course, my dear friend. He's the only one we've ever had to edit, of course. Episode 2, we thought we were going to get fired because of Mr. O'Brien.
I'm sure it was a lot of editing too.
There was one major edit. But I think I enjoyed the ones you're not sure what's going to happen. For example, Carlos Moro not too long ago.
That was a phenomenon.
I was not expecting that to be so visceral, and it was. Let's see.
Dave Eisenberg one was
the Eisenberg one was very, very powerful.
Yeah,
that was very powerful.
Down in his old classroom.
Yeah,
right?
it was in the Moss conference room.
It was in the Moss.
Yeah, and I knew that one. We knew that one was important. but they've all been good. Carter's milk truck story, but John Coryell, you know you're not the smartest guy in the room when you talk to John Coryell. I mean, Mark Rogers, the sports agent, I learned a whole lot about, that area, what it's like. Yeah, the football ones, Mirabal, Mike Whittington, who played with the Giants, who was my idol when I was a sophomore here. I wanted to be like him. Yes, thank God the brains of the organization is helping me out. Marcus Lemonis and Mario Suarez was pretty good. I'll put it this way, there's not been one I disliked.
You guys are planned for next season already? Season 8 we're going?
Season 7.
Season 7.
We have quite a list of people that we want to get on, and so we're just going to keep doing this till we run out of people, so.
That's great, John. Well, I think we're about time.
Okay.
Really, I mean, on behalf of the alumni and the board and everybody, I really thank you and Melissa for everything you've done with these podcasts. Like you said, to me, it's oral history that's going to stay with the school forever, and I think it's phenomenal what you guys are doing. So I'm going to finish like you finish all your podcasts. John, what does being Marist mean to you?
I think it means do good things. Do good things. Put yourself in an opportunity to help other people. I think at this school, because we are not elitist, there are all kinds of kids here. And there are kids here that are a little bit different. And you want to help them assimilate. And I think, you're strongest when you help the weakest. And I think that's what being Marist is all about. And when you the opportunity to make the world a little better place. And you never know the impact you're going to have on a person until years and years go by and you find out. So when you have a chance to help someone, you do. And that's what being Marist is to me, particularly the world we live in today. Young men need good role models, and they need an opportunity, and they need to understand, you're going to make mistakes, and things are going to happen. But if you believe in yourself and you're willing to let people help you, one day you can also help. That's what being Marist is to me. Just doing good things, bro.
Great. Couldn't have said it better.
Thank you.
Well, I'll let you close out your 100th podcast.
Well, want to thank, of course, the brains of the organization, Mrs. Melissa Marty, Mr. Omar Delgado, your classmate.
I got stories on that.
Of course you do. Stories that we can't tell. And thank you for doing this. It meant a lot to me. As Melissa said, there was one choice, and it was you. And
I appreciate it. Thank
I've
you very
enjoyed
much.
it. And so we have hit number 100. And so you guys that tune in and listen, and I want to thank someone very special. You're official when you have a sponsor.
Yes.
Yes.
How can we forget?
Albert Bartholomew and his family sponsor this. We're legit. Adrian, we got a sponsor. So thank you, Albert. Appreciate you very much. Melissa, thank you. And thank you, Explorer Nation. And so until next time, as we start our way on to 200, buenos tiempos and adelante. Thank you, boys.